We are ready to start. So let's start by introducing our guest, Erika Cowen, Vice President of Customer Success at F5, and also introducing MJ Carlier, which is a Principal Customer Success Manager at F5. And most of you know me already, Luciana, Customer Success Manager at F5 too. So we're ready to kick off.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. First question. Your current role is VP of Customer Success at F5, and you've been with us for the past 10 years. Was there a moment in your life that made you know that leadership was for you, or did that happen without you even realizing?
Thank you, Lucy. So reflecting on this, and it's been 25 years now that I've been in the corporate world, and I still remember day one for me. So day one for me was a job at Bell Canada, that's where I'm from, I'm Canadian. And the first job was in inside sales, and our new hire trainer on day one told us, dress for the job that you want, not the job you have. And don't expect to get off the phones for 2 years. You're in inside sales, and we need you locked in that seat. So the first comment for me was less about clothes, and it was more about the way that we show up and showing up as who we want to be. And so if we want to be a leader, it's showing up in that way with our customers, with our peers, with everyone in the office. And opportunities have a way of finding you when you show up with what you want to be. And then the second piece was don't expect to get off the phone for 2 years. Of course, I took as a challenge because that's my personality. And so in 9 months, I was a manager and was off the phones. And that was my first set a goal for myself and make it happen.
Lovely, thank you.
We mentioned a lot of leadership roles you've taken in the past. If you could go back in time to your first one, what advice would you give yourself?
So there was actually really good advice that I got from another, he wasn't my direct leader, but it was someone that I met at a leadership training. And his advice to me, and it was based on a question that I asked as part of the training, and he pulled me aside at break and he said, it sounds like you're struggling with some time management things. I was 25 years old, new manager. And his question to me was, if you color-coded your calendar, how much time are you spending with your direct reports and your team versus in other things, other meetings, just other things. And at the time, I realized that I was only spending 10 to 15% of my time with my team. And so something shifted for me that day, and I became very intentional. And for the last 20 odd years, it's a non-negotiable. I've had many people challenge me, are you sure you don't want bi-weekly one-on-ones? No, I like weekly one-on-ones with my leadership team, try to have a weekly management meeting as well. And it's not about hand-holding my directs, it's about multiplying. So if we are in lockstep, if we are clear, if they're confident, if we're aligned, then that can multiply across the organization. But if they're unsure, if they're not in alignment, then that also ripples through the organization. And so this advice to me that he gave me many years ago was where you invest your time is what you value. And so for me, my primary is starting with my team and booking that time and everything else around it.
That's very good advice. I find myself in a lot of CSMs in the opposite situation sometimes where we struggle to find time with the customers because we have many internal meetings. So that's a really good one.
Yes.
Yes. Next question. What's a challenge you faced that turned out to be the best teacher?
So I had a really unique situation that probably doesn't come up, often. But after leaving Bell, I wanted to have a larger voice at the table. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and so I chose to go work for a private company. I was hired by a company out of Sydney, Australia, to start up North American operations out of Toronto. And 2 weeks in, I got a call from the owner. He was in Sri Lanka on a once-in-a-lifetime family trip with 3 generations of his family. And he's like, I know I've only known you for 2 weeks, but I need somebody on the ground I can trust. There's some stuff going down in Sydney. Can you help? And he had an exodus of his leadership team, and his chief financial officer and customers were calling. So I got on a plane. I got the call Friday. I got on the plane Sunday. Thinking I was going for 2 weeks to help out until he got back from vacation. And what I realized when I was there was that the company was in crisis. I was single at the time. I had just left a company like Bell Canada to join this small company. I just bought my second condo, and I'm like, holy crap, this company's not doing well. But I was at a place in my life where I could make a decision to either jump back on the airplane or double down. And I chose the opportunity to double down, got a work visa, stayed in Australia, learned, how to manage the finance team, the HR function, got through the customer escalations, brought stability back to the business. And the best teacher was experience. And so that was a hard thing in my life that opened many doors. In fact, somebody that worked for me at that company joined F5 and called me back in Toronto, 2 years later and said, you've got to come check out F5. It's an incredible company. You would love the culture. And I'm always a believer in things kind of happen for a reason. So that company brought me here.
Yes. And we're glad it brought you here. I think this is a great example. I try to remind myself all the time that something hard happens. Instead of being upset about it and panic, it's how can I turn that into something good? So that's an excellent example. Thank you, Erika.
So in this example, you clearly said yes. How do you decide in your career what to say yes or no to?
So it's been a bit of an adjustment because I've always been a believer and lived by the philosophy of do something every day that scares you, always believing that I need to kind of say yes to every challenge that comes up. And now I'm a mom to 9-year-old twins. And so that factors into my decisions. I have to look at things and decide, does this challenge me, energize me, teach me something, but is it also not going to cause me to compromise the most important thing in my life, which is my family at home? And if it allows me to do those things, then it can be a yes. And if it doesn't, it has to be a no. So it's not about limiting ambition, but it's about choosing the life that I want to have and the mom that I want to be, as well as the career that I want to have. And that has come into play for me in a way that it didn't used to.
Yeah, thank you. And it's an honor to have you here today because you said yes to it. So it's an honor. Thank you. Next question. What's one thing you think that great mentors shouldn't do?
So I think we're all professionals here and probably all fixers. And so one thing that I have found particularly challenging, and I think some people do as well, is not giving the answers. When you're the mentor, someone comes to you with a problem, it's easy to just be like, well, why don't you try this or try that? So to me, it has to be about taking a step back, quieting your fixer voice and asking the right questions so that we help grow future leaders and ask the questions that allow them to find the answers, because that's what creates confidence for them and creates the next generation of leaders.
Very good, thank you. Another question is, do you have any daily or weekly habits that you do to keep yourself grounded and motivated?
Yeah, I'm a list maker and visual. So home office based when I'm not traveling. And I think my husband was surprised when I ordered a wall-size whiteboard for my home office. But I need to have my list on my whiteboard in my office, looking out 2 to 3 weeks of the most important things that are coming up, and then scheduling prep time to get the presentations done, the important things that I need to get ready for. And that just avoids the unnecessary stress of going, holy crap, I've got an important meeting in 2 days and I'm not ready. And a lot of times as we get to be senior leaders, we need things from other people and making sure that we're giving them enough time to complete the asks and trying to avoid fire drills when we can.
Perfect.
Thank you. My next question for you is, when you are feeling like you're lacking confidence, what do you do to get it back?
So I got into affirmation cards a couple years ago. I think initially the first pack I got were a gift, and you just would pull a card every day and read the affirmation card. And last year I found ones called Listen Bitch. And it's a Toronto-based company, and it's things like, listen, bitch, you've done harder things than this before, so stop doubting yourself and go get it done. And I find in particularly stressful times at work, I'll be like, I need some grounding. I'll pull a card, I'll prop it up, and I'll, go into the QBR, reminding myself of that. The other thing is, over the years, there's been lots of talk about board of advisors. And, that's the group of people that you call upon. And I have somebody in my board of advisors who's my Shut That Duck Up girl. And so Shut That Duck Up is a book by Peter Cowen. And the philosophy of it is that we all have an inner negative voice, and that voice is always quacking. And it doesn't mean that it's real, but we need to find a way to not give that that duck the microphone. And so when I call her, I know the first thing she's going to say. When I tell her I'm, lacking confidence, she's going to say, "Shut that duck up." It's guaranteed. So before I call her, I will think like, do I really need to call her, or can I shut the duck up myself? But often, I will need to call her and talk through things. And so it's about having the own internal practices that you go through, but also having the board of advisors that you can call upon when you need grounding in different areas.
That's excellent, and I'm going to look them up. I want to see these cards now. Another question is, did you ever have a complete shift of your mindset to approach your career differently?
I think this one's a work in progress for me, and it is about realizing that I am my own biggest critic. So it's not my boss, it's not my team, I don't think, it's not my peers. We're hardest on ourselves. And so if I try to stop working on thinking that everything needs to be perfect, and realizing that if I bring my ultimate integrity, my passion, my best efforts, that has to be enough, and it's about being kinder to ourselves. And so I think that's all we can do. I don't think I'm doing that perfectly, but it is a work in progress for me, especially over the last couple of years, to be more mindful of it.
Thank you. Next question. How do you keep learning and growing as a senior leader?
I think it's about continuing to say yes to things that challenge you. I think it's about staying curious, learning things. We've gotten this far in the talk without mentioning AI, so of course I have to say AI. But the fact that there's so much to learn right now, and the world is changing and technology is changing, and if you're curious and continuing to learn, that's important. And I think the other piece too is surrounding yourself with people that challenge you to be better. I had a wonderful opportunity to participate in a program a few years ago through the International Women's Forum, and I did a program with 40 women, and like every time I talk to them, I'm motivated by the amazing things that they're accomplishing. So wherever you are in your career, having people that motivate you to go do the next thing is important.
And your next thing could be being a speaker here for the CS Hub.
So I mentioned that we discussed the book you read about, Write It Down, Make It Happen. And the book talks about clarity, intention, and the act of writing things down. Do you have your own version of writing things down and making things happen?
Yeah, so I read that book last January. I am like like I said earlier, a list maker, a goal setter. What I liked about that book is I've always been a believer in the power of intention. It's a bit of a joke that my husband said we could have one child, and I manifested boy-girl twins. So I've always been a believer in the power of manifestation. But in that book, the philosophy is that when you write things down, something kind of the wiring of your brain looks for ways to try and make those things happen subconsciously. And so for me, when I read the book last year, in January, at this stage of life, it's about trying to continue to drive my career, but also living a well-balanced life. And so I chose to do this practice across a variety of pillars. So I made my list of what were the career goals that I wanted to achieve, what were the financial goals, what were the family goals, what were the travel goals, what were the wellness goals. And when I went back and looked at it kind of mid-year, I was really proud of myself that I had achieved a whole bunch of things, more than I even really thought that I would have achieved in 6 months. But unfortunately, the wellness ones were the ones that were probably the least effective. And so that's what I'm doubling down on in 2026, to try and bubble those ones up and not get sick every October and November, because I am taking care of myself.
Perfect. Final question, maybe, as we talk about resolutions, it's always easy to write them down, but it's not always easy to actually do it. So what's the difference for you between a dreamer and a doer?
I think it's about taking the first step. And I've had a dream to take my family to Italy since the twins were born. And we were going to do it last year, and I put it off. I was talking about doing it this year, but I was a little worried, was it actually going to happen? And my favorite band is playing in Verona in July. So I bought tickets last week as the first step. So we need to talk about QBR. But but I bought the tickets, and now I'm going to base the trip around this concert, and I'm making it happen. So the difference between dreaming and doing is take that first step, that one thing. I bought the tickets, and now I'm going to build everything else around that decision.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, that's it. Thank you very much, Erika. It was an honor to have you here today. And we will hand over to our next guest.